Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning, good morning to you. You, good morning, good morning, good morning to you. You, good morning, good morning to you, and many more. Good morning, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues, Black Table Talk Edition. I am your host today, Shantae Charles. I hope that you have been having a great and wonderful day, and I am going to start off by sharing this broadcast with my other platforms. I encourage you to do the same as we are going to be concluding our teaching series today on Hoodoo Origins and Understandings. Take a moment to share this out as we get ready to dive in. We're going to pick up where we left off from last time, and then we're going to start with part 5 today. So, again, I hope that you've been having a great and wonderful morning. And let's see if we have some comments in the chat. If you are with me for the first time, I want to welcome you. We are here on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the regular. You can also catch this by podcast at Daring Dialogues wherever there are dialogues being had. Wherever there are podcasts being had, Google Play, Spotify, we are also on there under Daring Dialogues. All right, so let's see here. For some reason, I cannot see my chat, but it's okay. I have my phone out so I can see it there. All right. So let's make sure that I can see my chat here. All right. Good morning. I'm going to minimize myself here because I want the primary focus to be on our presentation. So let me go ahead and do that. All right. So last time we began to talk about hoodoo and the operation to remove hoodoo from society. We talked about the ways in which those who were spirit workers, those who were root workers or herbalists, those who were seen as conjurers were targeted and unalived. Some who believed that they had been hoodooed eventually concluded that in order to get unhoodooed, so to speak, that they had to unalive the conjurer. So there was a period of time where this was a serious, serious matter. People were being unalived for this practice. So let's go to part 5 today. Marketeered, racketeered hoodoo. If it can be monetized, it will be colonized. Somebody put that in the chat. If it can be monetized, it will be colonized. The culture of hoodoo was created by African Americans. There are regional styles to this tradition, and as African Americans traveled, the tradition of hoodoo changes according to the environment. Hoodoo includes reverence to ancestral spirits. Notice we said reverence. People often confuse reverence with worship. but they reverence their ancestors. African American quilt making, animal sacrifice, herbal healing, Bakongo and ego burial practices, Holy Ghost shouting, praise houses, snake reverence, African American churches, spirit possession, Nkisi and Minkisi practices, Black spiritual churches, Black theology, the ring shout, the Congo cosmogram, Simbi nature spirits, graveyard conjure, crossroads spirits, making conjure canes, incorporating animal parts, pouring of libations, Bible conjure, and conjuring in the African American tradition. Good morning to each of you coming in. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And thank you for sharing this out. By the 20th century, white drugstore owners and mail order companies that were owned by white Americans changed the culture of hoodoo. The hoodoo that is practiced outside of African American community is not the hoodoo that is created by African Americans. Let me say that one more time. The hoodoo that is practiced outside of the African American community is not the hoodoo that has been created by African Americans. One more time for the people who seem to not understand this. The hoodoo that is practiced outside of the African American community is not the hoodoo created by African Americans. It is called marketeered hoodoo. Other words for marketeered hoodoo are commercialized or tourist hoodoo. Hoodoo was modified by white merchants and replaced with fabricated practices and tools, while some of the hoodoo practices by African Americans in the 20th century into the present day actually went underground. Marketeered hoodoo spread further outside the African American community into other communities when hoodoo was marketed on the internet. So when we look overall at the practices that we've been talking about, we also have to understand that there are some things that have been interjected into the culture of hoodoo as a way to market it to other people, as a way to commercialize, as a way to sensationalize and make money off of a practice that was previously persecuted by the very people who brought it into the country by way of the transatlantic slave trade. So it moves from something that is respected, something that is revered, something that um, our ancestors relied on many times to in order to heal themselves and to treat themselves. It has now been interjected with all other kinds of things in order to commercialize it and market it and make money off of it. So when you say hoodoo or when you say root working, really you can't put all of it into the same category. And that is one of the issues that we're having in our present day is because it has been categorized and lumped in with all of these other things. So let's talk about hoodoo and how it has now become what we call a complement to alternative health care. It was alternative health care in and of itself, but let's take a look at where hoodoo is now and where is it fitting in now. All right. Most people have heard of things like naturopathic health, homeopathic health. I learned about homeopathic health right around 2000, the year 2000. I was coming into contact with a lot of people who were engaged and involved in homeopathic health, herbalism. Okay. Some hoodoo practitioners did attend herbal colleges. They traveled abroad and they brought those practices back from countries and continents like India, Asia, and Africa. You have something called CAM practices. These get adapted as mainstream, and once they are proven safe and effective, they get adapted into mainstream culture. So there are five major domains. There's alternative medical systems, there are mind body interventions, There are biologically based treatments, there are manipulative body based methods, and then there are energy therapies like Reiki, prana, therapeutic touch, laying on of hands, which most people know that energetic therapy from the Black church. TCM is a system of healing that was noticed around 200 BC in its in written form. It can be found in China, Korea, Japan, India, and Vietnam. They all have their traditional medicine practices of their own. And these are therapies that are said to complement Western medicine, also known as allopathic medicine. These practices were not demonized in the way that hoodoo has been, even when African healing systems were proven to be effective. Alternative medicine simply means therapeutic approaches to treat or ameliorate disease. What does that have to do with hoodoo? I'm glad you asked. Integrative medicine, combining CAM with conventional care, using things like Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, massage, diet, changing of your diet, and herbs. This is all considered integrative medicine. Homeopathy, doses of substances to stimulate your body's self healing response. Naturopathy, non invasive treatments that you take and utilize for your body. Hypnotherapy, okay, all of these are forms of treatment. Natural and biology based, dietary supplements. So if you take dietary supplements, herbal supplements, botanicals, animal derived extracts, vitamins, minerals, proteins, prebiotics, all of that would have fallen under hoodoo. But the medical community has now labeled it as simply natural and biology based treatments. Ancient medicines, Chinese have ancient medicines, Pacific Islanders, American Indians, Native Americans, Tibetan. All of these people have ancient medicinal practices, but the African ones were the ones that were stigmatized, outlawed, and punished by death in the United States. So we aren't the only culture that has had ancient medicinal practices, but we are the culture where those practices were outlawed, they were punished by death, people were imprisoned, people were taken to jail for quote unquote practicing medicine without a license. Those things happen to our ancestors. In 2002, there was a study done about what were the most common therapies that people were involved in and engaged in. Take a look at the percentage of the common therapies that people are involved in. Because I need us to understand how common people are using, how commonly used the therapy of herbalism is. So, of the people in this therapy, 45.2% of them saw prayer as a common therapy for them, as a therapeutic method and alternative. 45.2%. Okay. So, if you're around people who are like, prayer doesn't change things, well, 45.2% of the people who were surveyed would disagree with you. But look at where herbalism falls. Herbalism, 18.9% of people, and I'm quite sure it's probably higher if they were to do this study again today. I'm sure it's higher than 18.9% of people that see herbalism as a therapeutic practice. This was back in 2002. Breathing and meditation, 11.6% of people were using breathing and meditation as a common therapeutic practice. Meditation alone, 7.6%. Chiropractic practice, the originator and the founder, there's some very interesting history there. We're not talking about it today, but you can go look it up. 7.5% of people see chiropractic as a normalized form of therapy. 5.1% were using yoga. We know that has definitely increased in our society. Body work, 5%. The utilization of your diet, the adjusting of your diet as a therapeutic practice, 3.5% of people. 3.5%. Now, we definitely know people are adjusting their diet, right? It's definitely more than 3.5% of the population doing that now. Mega vitamins. Look at how mega vitamins have taken off in the past 20 years. That is definitely a $1 billion industry. But back then, 2.8% of people saw mega vitamins as a common therapeutic practice. And look at this one, visualization. Visualization, 2.1%. Now, in this particular medical journal that I was looking at, out of all of these practices, there was only one sentence in the whole report that said this: other traditional medical systems have been developed by Native American, Aboriginal, African, Middle East, Tibetan, Central, and South American cultures. So that means they condensed all of those people's practices down to one sentence to say, oh, and by the way, these cultures also have traditional medical systems. I thought that was very ironic, being that a lot of what we see in the medical field comes out of these other traditional medical systems. But I'm going to roll this back up for you. So if you want to screenshot it, you can screenshot it. But back then, prayer and herbalism in 2002, prayer and herbalism were the top two most common therapeutic practices. So, why do you have people that are running you away from something that was a common therapeutic practice? Why are people afraid of what was considered common therapeutic practices? Herbalists, Hoodoo Redux. Herbalists, also known as the hoodooists of their day, but now we call them herbalists. Herbalists dispensed ointments and potions. They utilized root medicine for spiritual properties, medical, and supernatural. Conjurers applied and lifted blessings or curses using herbs and other materials. Today's herbalists are wary. They offer disclaimers. Many of them do not dispense anything. They simply tell people what to use. They no longer prepare any root medicine. They no longer prepare them for people because now the field of pharmacy is the legal preparer and dispenser. So even if you find someone who knows the science, who knows the science behind what can heal you, what can cure you, many of them will no longer prepare it for you. They will tell you what to go get. They will tell you, how much of it, that to prepare. But when it comes down to doing it for you like they used to do it, they no longer do that because in the past, again, these people were arrested, they were fined, they were charged with, not having a license to practice medicine. It didn't matter if they had been doing it all their life. It was criminalized for them, and then it was monetized for the West. Okay? So now we have the field of pharmacy. Pharmacists are your legal preparers, they're your legal dispensers. But are pharmaceuticals the same as Herbalism. I think most of us can answer that on our own. One field of medicine. Most people have come to recognize that there is really one field of medicine and not two. The difference is some medicines are proven and some are unproven, or they have low efficacy rates, or they have not gone through clinical trials. So, what is the difference between, you know, what your pharmacist is preparing versus what your herbalist would have been preparing in the past? A specific system was set up and developed, and that system said, you've got to go through some clinical trials. You've got to have a high efficacy rate in order for things to be considered proven and approved through this particular system. Meanwhile, the people who had been doing this for centuries, the practices that had been passed down for centuries, those practices slowly but surely went underground. Are there still some people out here today? There are, but from my readings, a lot of these people who practiced the traditional ways have pretty much gone underground. You have to seek them out by word of mouth because they do not want to get caught up in being prosecuted. They don't want to get caught up in, legal challenges and those kinds of things. So they have been challenged to hide no more. Traditional hoodoo of African American people went into hiding by the 20th century into the present day. There is a spiritual philosophy in hoodoo, and the tradition does have its own theology that is missing, which was taken out by the spiritual merchants who wanted to profit from an African American spiritual tradition. The spiritual church, the sanctified church, and praise houses in Black communities is where traditional hoodoo continues to be practiced by African Americans. One scholar traced manufactured hoodoo to the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North. African American folk magic changed in urban northern areas as African Americans did not have access to things like fresh herbs and roots from their backyards, or neighborhoods, as some bought their supplies from stores that profited from African American folk practices. White merchants profited from African American folk magic and placed stereotypical images of Indians onto hoodoo product labels to sell merchandise that would appear mystical, exotic, and powerful. So, even as this began to be more commercialized, it started moving away from signs of Africanism. They were even changing the labels and identifying some of their products with other cultures to move it away from African origin. According to some scholars, the research and understanding of African American hoodoo should be examined from the Black American experience and not from the interpretation of marketeers and exploiters found in books and online published by people who are not African American. White Americans want to appropriate Black culture and claim it as their own for profit. All right. So that is the conclusion of our lecture on today. So let's go now to, I'm going to shrink this down. And if you would like to join me, I am trying to find my comments here. There they go. Good morning. If you would like to join me, I am going to add my link to the chat and I will bring you into my studio. I think I can have up to 4 or 5 people in here at a time. There's my link. So if you would like to join me, I'll bring you backstage and then I will bring you on and we can utilize the rest of our time to have some discussion about hoodoo origins and understandings. Again, this has been part 5. This is the conclusion of this lecture. If you missed the first 4 parts, they are available here on Facebook. You can go to my video section and you can look for the videos that say Hoodoo Origins and Understandings, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, I'll give it a few minutes here um, for anyone who would like to jump into the link and join me back. All right. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I can hear you just fine as well.
Great. Great. Uh, Listen, came across a video yesterday with Paul Mooney, the
Okay.
late comedian, and he was
Mm-hmm.
talking about the same thing that you just talked about, how they take our stuff. See, I don't know if I said it to you or not. I may not have. There was a lot of foul language, him, but there was a lot of foul language, but he was speaking the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept putting the cameras on the white folks in the audience, and they were laughing. But he was speaking the truth. It was funny the way he was saying it, but he just straight spoke the truth. They take our stuff. They make it look bad. And he used one of the examples that I always use, and that's the braids or cornrows, whatever you want to call them. They were
Mm-hmm.
bad until that white girl, Bo Derek, wore them in the movie 10. She was a 10. See?
I think I remember that because I've watched a lot of Mooney's comedy in the past. So
Hmm.
yeah, I remember him talking about Bo Derek.
Yeah, and it's so obvious that it's funny. I mean, it's not even hidden.
No,
It's not even hidden. If you just
but
open your eyes and pay attention, you recognize it.
what I want people to understand is hoodoo has been integrated into the practices of medicine that we see today.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
it's not in its purest original form, but it has been integrated under the banner of, holistic medicine, naturopathic medicine.
Hmm.
um, those terminologies are covering over the fact that those are hoodoo practices that have been integrated. And
Hmm.
so your ancestors were put in jail for those same practices that has now become a billion-dollar industry for other people. And
Hmm.
I don't see any apologies being given. I don't see any reparations being given. I don't see any of that. And so, you know,
Of course
my
not.
my question is, um, where's the repair? Where's the repair for demonizing people and putting them in jail and unaliving them and bringing up false charges on them
Well, listen, America.
so that you could extract other people's practices and then turn around and repackage them and sell them back into our society? Where is the apology for that? Where's the repair for that?
Well, listen, America doesn't believe in that when it comes to African Americans. We'll pay Jews. Didn't do anything to them. We'll pay the Japanese that bombed Pearl Harbor. I mean, I understand. Yeah, they went into camps. Okay, fine. You know, I understand that. We'll pay everybody, but the ones that we kidnapped from their home country, brought here, made them build this country, and invented just about everything that they put their hands on, and that even the wealthy white folks were going to for healing because it worked.
Mm-hmm.
See, all those things. We cannot give you all reparations because we're not responsible for what our ancestors did. Well, that's not even scriptural. Scriptural makes the child responsible for what the father did. So it's up to the child to make it right. I mean, they like to use scripture. They like to use God's name. Let's use it. Let's use it across the board for what it's actually saying. And it's actually saying that the sins of the father are upon the son. If the father dies and have not straightened out what he did wrong, it's up to the son. If the son don't do it, then guess what? It goes on to his son, and on and on and on. This is why America is in so much turmoil right now, because they refuse to do what's right when it comes to the people that they harm us. And put it that way.
So, what was one of the things that stood out to you about the entire series? Because I know you've had a chance to listen to all 5 parts.
You know what? Uh, well, actually, the stigmatization. I'm trying to say the right word here, but anyway, the demonization
Mm-hmm.
of what was actually pure,
Mm-hmm.
in order to take it away from a person, you know, out of fear. Number one, there was a lot of fear there
Mm-hmm.
because many of them didn't want it because they were afraid that they were going to do something against them and
Right.
kill them. When all they were trying to do is, hey, listen, I don't want you to hurt me, and I want to heal people. That was basically the bottom line. We brought some of our plants over from Africa, and I'm gonna tell you what I love also, how they how they intermingled their medicine with the indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
See,
Yep.
they work together, and they, oh well, listen, these are the plants that we use in Africa. Okay, this is what we use. Okay, we can use that to substitute this that we used to use in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
See, and they came up with something that worked. So, but then again, that show you.
Yeah, so
From the
they were innovating and they were
yeah,
improvising once they got
right.
here because they
Mhm.
realized that they didn't have all of their native plants that they would have
Mhm.
been using in Africa. So they compromised, with
Mhm.
what they were using at some point. And there was also shared knowledge because a lot of
Right.
times, again, depending on who's telling the history, they will have you believe that just everybody was at war with everyone else.
Mm-mm.
But that can't be true if I'm learning from the Native Americans and I'm learning what things I can use to replace
Mhm.
in order to help my own healing practices.
And
Now,
I actually.
were there some tribes that did practice enslavement? Yes.
Mhm.
Were there some tribes that actually took black people in
Mhm.
and intermarried? Yes,
Mhm.
both things can be true.
Mhm. Yeah. Now there, I actually shared a video where there's this female chief. Her skin is as dark as mine. They're not being recognized because they fought to free slaves.
Yeah. Some of them. Yep.
See, so and that's a problem. That's a problem. They're native. They're indigenous, but you're not recognizing them. Why? Because they went against you. They went against the people that you wanted to continue to use as your cash, cattle, and capital. You got to be some evil people. You got to be some evil people. And I just had to respond to a conversation that was going on the post on a post. I spoke a conversation we had yesterday. I actually spoke on that yesterday on this post. About God and what God is about and all these things. Somebody gonna say, well, something about that's insane. What's insane? And then somebody said something about, did you vote for God in the office and stuff? I said, wait a minute. I said it's Republicans that are using God's. I mean, I called them out. And I said it's the Republicans that are using God's name to push authoritarianism. See, they're using God's name. They're lying on God. And I say it was God that told the people that He chose to serve Him. You choose who you want to serve. How do we get past that? How can we say that? Oh no, God, you sit on the sideline. We gonna make them choose to serve us, because that's basically what it boils down to. You're not pro-life. You're not pro-life. You're anti-abortion. Pro-life is about life from the womb to the tomb, regardless of race, creed, color, or sexual orientation. That's pro-life because you're about all life. Anti-abortion, you're about that child in the womb. Once it gets out of the womb, you don't want you don't want to make sure that this child gets the proper nourishment. You're trying to cut that back. All the programs that would help them after they're born, you're trying to cut those back. So, and then when people are unalive at a rapid pace and unarmed, you want to ignore that. And then
Going back,
when one of your people commit mass murder, somehow they're brought in alive.
that takes me back to these practices
Hmm.
because one thing I, even in all of my research, one thing that I saw with all of these practices, um, and just looking at who was practicing and how they were practicing and how they were delivering healing, I didn't read anything about these practices being forced on anyone
Right.
at all. I didn't find any documentation that said um, that these practices were forced on anyone, even though we know that hoodoo, is connected and was connected to spirituality. Um, that was very interesting that they received anyone, regardless of what their spiritual practice or their belief system was.
Hmm.
They didn't refuse service to anyone, regardless of what
Hmm.
their spiritual practice and belief system was.
Hmm.
Um, so I thought that was interesting. The other piece I
Hmm.
thought was interesting is this wasn't just, if you think about it this way, they were utilizing these practices for medicinal reasons, but they were
Hmm.
also earning, monies because they were charging for their services of putting
Hmm.
these things together. So when these things got shut down and when they got persecuted and when they got banned by law, not just somebody coming and saying, no, you can't do this, but no, they
Hmm.
put laws into place to say this was illegal to do at all. You shut them off economically.
Hmm.
And then the other part of that is because their medicinal practice was connected to their spiritual practice. When you outlawed this, you also violated their First Amendment rights to the freedom of what?
Religion.
Religion.
Hmm.
So you had constitutional rights being violated at this point because this went on into beyond enslavement. This went into Reconstruction time. This went on through Jim Crow. This went on through the civil rights. So when you're talking about you can't do this practice that was connected to, how they saw spirit world, you were
Hmm.
literally cutting people off from their spiritual practice, not
Hmm.
just from the medicinal side. And again, I don't see no apologies going forth about this. So to me, there's a lot of reckoning um,
Hmm.
that our country has to do when it comes to African Americans. Recently, I've had some deaths in my family that have been very shocking, very disturbing. And part of that shockingness and disturbingness is the inadequate care that my family members were given on their way to transition to another plane.
Mhm.
Um, the lack of proper access, the um, being left in pain and not being treated and not being seen to in a timely manner. So when we look at what is happening with Black people's health in this country, and we talk about how the health gap is so wide,
Mhm.
how we are leading in all of the major diseases of death,
Mhm.
it goes back. There's a direct line back to this era. There's a direct line back to, let me cut you off from your practices that you were using to heal yourself.
Mhm.
It's one thing to say, you know, you all cannot do this amongst other people. It's another thing to cut it off entirely and say, if we see you doing these practices, you are going to jail,
Mhm.
or you could be um, given a death penalty for doing these practices.
Mhm.
Because now you aren't just saying we can't share this with other cultures. You're now saying you can't even do it for yourself.
Mhm.
You cannot heal yourself. So
Listen,
this
that's
is
that.
why today I side eye a
Mhm.
lot of these conversations about how bad of a health Black people are in, because my thing is, you are a part of the problem. You, sir, ma'am, were a part of the problem. Black people had healing practices. You stripped them of their healing practices. You made their healing practices illegal. You made their healing practices punishable by death. And now we look up hundreds of years later, and you have whitewashed their healing practices, and you now call it herbalism and alternative medicine.
Mhm. Well, listen. A few things happened there. Okay, number one, people were not going to the white doctors the way they wanted them to. They were going to what worked,
Yes,
and that was the African doctor. You know, the herbalists or the hoodoo practitioners. They were going there. Why? Because it worked. See, listen. If I see a used car, if I see a used car, a broken down car, and a brand new car that I can get for the same money, what car am I going to get? I'm going to get that brand new car. See, why would I even look at the broken down car? That doesn't make sense. So, so at that point, they were taking money away from the white doctors and getting results, better results. So we got to cut that out. Like I said before, they didn't say that they didn't outlaw white people going to the black doctors. They outlawed the black doctors practicing what they do.
correct.
See, it's that so that shows you. And then you said something that made me think about your brother, the healthcare. What was going on with him.
Hmm.
Uh, before you asked me to go down and visit him. That's not. That's the. That's that's just but that's across the board. Those things happen across the board. We're going to take care of these people, but you're black, so we're just going to let you sit and suffer and all that stuff. That literally happens. That literally happens. So, and people want to say, well, oh, no, 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 no. Y'all don't experience this. Here's the thing. You all don't experience what we experience as a people. Yet you ignore our experiences.
Hmm.
At least check out our experiences. Study our experiences. But you turn a blind and deaf eye and ear to what we're saying and what we're talking about. Then when it slaps you in the face like it did with George Floyd, then all of a sudden, oh wow, it's been happening, but you wouldn't listen.
Yep, it's been happening. It's just now being
Hmm.
documented in a in
Yeah.
a in a larger way.
Yeah. So.
Um, yeah, I mean, you brought up a very good point, and like I said, I have this subject is important to me because I'm seeing this in real time.
Hmm.
I'm seeing the huge gap, not just in health care, right? I'm seeing
Hmm.
the huge gap in just service, how
Hmm.
Black people are being serviced, how Black men are being left to die,
Hmm.
how, when a Black body is brought into a place of needing care, there is a lack of care given. There is gross negligence, not just negligence, there's gross negligence. And I, for one, am tired of seeing it.
Hmm.
And people acting as if there's not gross negligence happening when it comes to the care of Black bodies.
Hmm.
From let's go a little farther, from being eligible to receive services. Let's start there,
Yeah.
where people are in desperate need of services, but it's taking them 18 months, 24 months to even get eligible to receive services or coverage. Again, that's time that has gone by where they're not receiving care.
Hmm.
Then, when they finally get some services, the services are of poor quality, or they're being misdiagnosed, or they're being left without treatment, or they're having facilities say, oh, we can't take you for X, Y, and Z. We know you need help, but
Hmm.
we can't take you for X, Y, and Z. Like, just, I could just go down the line of all the things that I've seen in the last 3 years of the health gap and why it's continuing to widen. So it's not just because I often hear, I often kind of hear people say, oh, well, Black people, they just don't want to take care of their health, or they just don't want to eat right, or they're doing this, they're doing that. No, there are people who want to take care of their health. There are people who want to eat properly. There are people who want to adjust their diets. But what do you do when your community literally has no grocery stores?
Hmm.
And the only thing in your community is a check cashing place, fast food,
Hmm.
and a vape store.
Hmm. Don't
So
forget pawn shop.
so so we can't, oh yeah, and pawn shop. So we can't just keep saying, oh, it's Black people just don't want to. We actually have to look at all of the factors that's surrounding what's happening in communities. Am
Hmm.
I excited about the things that we're showing on this page about Black families that are buying the block, that are buying shopping centers, Black women that are, buying whole spaces in DC? Yes, but we definitely need more of that to increase because
Hmm.
we are and have been at a disadvantage for a very long time, and it has been a um, intentional disadvantage. It wasn't happenstance.
Right.
And that's one of the things I hope people are getting from this lecture series today. It's none of this was by happenstance. This was done intentionally to handicap Black people in this country when it comes to their health, not just when it comes to their wealth, but when it comes to their health and when it comes to their spiritual practices. This was done intentionally.
Hmm. Hmm. And
So
them
when I
and them.
see Black people saying things like this is of the devil, that tells me you don't understand. That tells me that you have been fully brainwashed and not understanding how much of your own heritage was stripped from you
Mhm.
to the point where the very things that was healing your ancestors, keeping them alive, helping them to resist enslavement and fight back, you don't even know
Mhm.
about it. You don't even know about it. And I
Well,
know
well,
you
what?
don't if you're continuing to say that black people have never really fought for our rights and we've been weak and we've been this and we've been that. We absolutely have not. But you won't know how much resistance took place if you don't study hoodoo.
Mhm.
You don't know. You won't know that the plantation owners were terrified of people who were involved in hoodoo.
Mhm.
They were terrified, not just in Haiti, they were terrified right here in the Americas
Mhm.
because they understood these people are fighting back, not just with herbalism. These people are fighting back with spiritual power and authority.
Mhm.
They're calling on the divine, and we can't have that.
Mhm.
They're calling on divine protection, and we can't have that. They know about a Christ that sets people free,
Mhm.
and we can't have that.
Mhm.
They brought over a Christ from the Congo that's kicking our tails, and we can't have that
Mhm.
because we've got to get a people indoctrinated under Kenny Loggins Christ.
Yeah.
Therefore, we cannot have this.
Mhm.
Final thoughts, Pastor Ben.
Well, listen, I like where we just ended, because they want you to believe in Jesus Kenny Loggins Christ and not Jesus Tyreek Christ, um, which is the Christ that they brought over from the Congo, and they understood. Listen, we serving the wrong God. They're serving the right. That's where they were at. They're serving the true and living God, but we can't have them doing that because we have to make them believe that we are God. We have to make them believe that God is our God and not theirs. See, so that's why we gotta twist up the word and all this other type of stuff to try and convince them. But how do you convince somebody like people been trying to convince me about God and I know about him? I tell them, listen, I have a personal relationship. I know my experiences with him. So you can't tell me anything to make me believe that he don't exist or he's not real or he's the white man's God. See, you can't do that. Personal
As
relationship, which they did. You can't convince them otherwise. They know what they've been depending on. They know who been depending on. They know who's been coming through for them. See, and you wanted to take that away from them because you knew it was working. You know,
exactly.
we can deal with you on the physical level.
I'm gonna go back to
We can deal with you. We can deal with you on the physical level. See, because we can inflict pain. But on that spiritual level, y'all kicking our butts. We can't deal with that. See, because y'all got that divine protection. We need to get y'all up out of that. So we got the freedom to do what we want to do.
I was once told in order to defeat a person, you have to convince them to give up their power.
Mm-hmm.
You have to convince them to give up their power. And the hoodoo practitioners did not give up their power.
Right.
When you look at the Congo cosmogram, and I'll come back to this as we close, this was their cross. This was their explanation of the cycles of life. This was their explanation of understanding what was happening above ground in the earth and understanding what was happening in the spirit world. They had their own cosmology And
Mm-hmm.
this cosmology followed them from Congo to the plantations to the churches. That this symbol was found all over the United States where enslavement took place. So they had a cross. They had an understanding of life, of death, of eternity, of spirit, of honoring. They had an understanding. And as much as the enslavers tried to extract that from them, they never gave it up. They never gave it up. Did it go underground for a lot of them? Yes, but they never gave it up. And so, as we close today, I want to encourage people to continue your own study of hoodoo. There are plenty of books out there. We have shown some examples in our previous lecture series. We encourage you to take advantage of doing some study for yourself. I could not cover all of the topics within hoodoo. I mean, we've done about 5.5 hours of complete teaching, but there is so much more to learn about the practice. So I encourage you to continue to study, to look up the resources for this particular subject. Thank you all again. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what?
Light.
Light. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Be well, and most importantly, be light.